welcome to episode 105 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly off-topic podcast. I'm your host for this week, Alana Hagues, and it's a two-man show this week, so we've got myself, and I'm joined by Peter Triezenberg.
Hey guys, I have Fury on the boards.
So, both of us, a couple of months ago, you might have remembered that we were on a podcast together called The Ultimate Weapons with Mike Solosi and Robert Fenner, and we had a real blast on that show, and it got me thinking throughout the episode and afterwards. There's kind of an antithesis to Ultimate Weapons as well, so, you know, you might want to take on the final boss with the Ultimate Weapon, or, I don't know, I was going to say Ultimate Weapon as well again, but they're the same thing. But this week we are looking at wacky weapons, so joke weapons, parody weapons, any kind of weapon that you look at and it's either a play on a traditional weapon or it's something that you wouldn't really expect a standard weapon to be. So umbrellas, brooms, anything like that, anything that you can grab. It's like zombie apocalypse, if you grab something it's your weapon kind of thing. That's how I always interpret joke weapons to be, but I always find them a nice break in an RPG where you're trying to destroy God or whatever, and then you just pick up, oh look, here's a CD, I'll just throw it at it or something. But here we go. So the kind of idea behind this is that we're just going to go over a couple of different ones that we remember. In particular, we've done a little bit of research before the podcast to see what we like and what we dislike and everything, and really just go through it and see if we've got any fun memories with any of them. So I suppose, I mean, Peter, if you want to get started, what do you think? What was one of the more memorable joke weapons for you?
One of my favorite. This is the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think of joke weapons in RPGs. I think of Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, where it's the DS entry in the Kingdom Hearts series. One of the two. It is the decent-ish one, but in that game. Had a multiplayer mode where you could play as different members of the organization, and you had all 13 organization members plus Shion, plus Sora, Riku. So you had, and every single character in that game had a gag weapon of some sort. In some cases, they had multiple gag weapons. But and they were all based on their play style. So you had really funny things like so like Xemnas, the main villain from Kingdom Hearts 2, you play as him in the normal game. He would do like dual wield lightsabers. In days when you give him his joke weapon, he has fans. Zigbar dual wields pistols. In his joke weapon, he dual wields hair dryers.
Hair dryers. Oh my god. I remember he had trumpets at some point, and I know that they make the noise, so when you fire towards them, yeah.
He has his trumpets. You can give Vexen like a pot lid. You can give Zexion a giant sandwich. Axel will dual pizzas instead of his shurikens.
Oh wow!
And of course, Roxas gets an umbrella instead of his keyblade.
Of course he does. Of course he does. I mean, keyblades are quite unusual weapons anyway, so it's like you know your RPG's going to places where fighting with umbrellas is more difficult than, you know, keyblades and stuff like that. But
so your standard weapon's already a giant key, so you might as well just go ham with it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, Kingdom Hearts doesn't really do joke weapons very often, does it? I can't really think of another entry in the series that runs away quite as particularly as the multiplayer version of 358 over 2. And yeah, like I said, the giant key already is kind of a suspend your disbelief moment, but fans are such a good staple on that every RPG ever has probably had a dual swords person with 2 fans, and it's always really great. But
yeah, I mean, and then you have like you have some like silly keyblade designs, but like the Winnie the Pooh ones are often really funny. It's like one's like a giant like pot of honey on the end of a stick that you're hitting things with. But then the fighting with fans, like, okay, so the fans are a joke weapon for Xemnas, but they're Yukiko's main weapons, and I mean she can deal out some pain with those.
Exactly.
So, yes, one man's trash is another man's treasure? Question mark? I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
That kind of works.
Yeah, I do like how, and this is something I'll probably come back to later in the episode, I like how in some games that you have weapons that are used as joke weapons, but then in other RPGs that you have like the Yukiko example, she uses fans as her standard weapon, and you just get different variants of them anyway, so it's always funny to see where RPGs tend to go with their standard weapons, and that's why it's called wacky weapons as opposed to joke weapons, so we can look at kind of the bizarre kind of equipment that characters tend to get, not just the silly, like, oh, I have an umbrella instead of a sword for this one fight or whatever. But yeah,
Persona kind of does that in a way too, because half of the equipment they'll get is like something they'd be able to get normally, like a baseball bat, or Kanji will use like a desk. That's like their starting equipment. And not really a joke weapon so much as, it makes sense. They don't have access to weapons yet. They just kind of brought what they could smuggle in.
Yeah, so I remember that one of Yosuke's first weapons is a pair of spanners. And I remember having those for ages and thinking, am I ever going to get knives? Like, what's his actual real weapon? And I was kind of like, oh, it looked quite funny, but it makes sense because, they're just teenagers and you can't really go around carrying real knives around the real world, so yeah.
Yeah, right. And then in Persona 5, they literally just make it so, like, because your cognition or whatever changes, so your fake toy weapons become real weapons. Metaverse, and it's like, oh well, okay, now we're getting around this kind of literally.
Yeah, exactly. Persona 3 had a couple of joke weapons as well, but the only one I can remember is I can remember the toy bow that I can't remember her name now. Yeah, the one. Yeah, so one of them had like a toy bow that fired like stick-on arrows and things like that. I think somebody had a golf.
That's Yukari.
Yukari, that's right. Yeah, so. I think someone had a golf club at one point. That might have been 4 as well, but just kind of, in some cases, they're usually like starting weapons, but in some cases they can be really powerful. But going back to Kingdom Hearts at the moment, like, it is really bizarre how joke weapons, it's like we say, like, the giant key's already strange enough, so joke weapons don't really make it into it, and you were talking about some of the Keyblade designs. Like, some of them are just impractical, like, probably when we touched on Ultimate Weapon and Fenrir with how long they are and everything. They're just not the most useful weapons to use, but even Donald and Goofy's weapons tend to have a fairly standard design to them, so it's nice that 358/2, after everything else that I dislike about it, has kind of pulled off the, okay, we're going to do this kind of thing, so that was good.
Yeah, that game is, like, all kinds of clunky and... Trying to play an action game on a DS's D-pad is an exercise frustration, but the joke weapons were funny.
Yeah. So were they only available in multiplayer as well? Because you could only play as the organization members in all multiplayer, couldn't you?
I think you can like do the multiplayer quests by yourself, but it's like they boost all the enemies' health because it's designed for multiplayer.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really, I don't think it's recommended. You can mess around with them, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend doing multiplayer on your own. But I suppose we better jump ship from one flagship Square series to another, in that Final Fantasy is probably going to come up, and it definitely is. So the biggest example that I could think of is, quite famously, Gilgamesh's sword Excalibur, which in itself is a pun on Excalibur. The weapon description in Final Fantasy V is, legendary holy sword can be used two-handed, and that basically sums it up. So Gilgamesh, everybody knows, is this wonderful comical character who, in some games, wants to be the greatest swordsman ever. In others, he's called Greg. So, Final Fantasy XIV reference, my favourite.
Wait, really?
Yeah, so a side minute. There's a side quest with a character called Hildebrand. I don't know if you know him. He's got the monocle.
Yeah, I know.
So he occasionally calls Gilgamesh Greg because he doesn't know how to say his name. So it's kind of stuck with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of fantastic.
Yeah. Basic but inoffensive. So Gilgamesh is kind of characterized by this sword called Excalibur, and of course everyone will know Excalibur is usually one of the best weapons in the game. Like a 9, it's Steiner's best weapon. So Excalibur is exactly what it says, really. So it's not very good. I mean, he uses it against X-Death, but X-Death seems to better him. Excalibur is then acquired, I think, after you defeat him towards the end of the game. the battle power is very high. So it's, for example, it's got like in Final Fantasy V, it's got like a base attack of, I don't know, like maybe 80 or 90, I can't remember. But it doesn't do any more than 1 damage, so the stat doesn't actually affect anything that you can do at all. So it's completely useless. But the only other thing, I mean, some of these weapons have some uses. So I'm looking here, and I'm about halfway through Final Fantasy V. I couldn't get much further than it. It's useful when you're trying to grind for AP, because there are enemies that only have 1 HP, and you can use that. And it's got an 100% hit rate as well, so you can kill this enemy in 1 hit, guaranteed, and then get loads of AP from it. Yeah, and so another thing that it's really good with is with Goblin Punch. So you can use Goblin Punch instead of the attack command. It does more damage while you're using that move, and also if you've got a ninja, if you throw it, it does do 9,999. So it's not totally useless, but I feel like Excalibur couldn't go unnoticed, really, because Gilgamesh is such an iconic character, and I'm about to fight him in Final Fantasy XII, and
yeah, right.
Families. Yeah, so I mean, it appears throughout the series pretty much, and the only other specific time I can remember it is in Final Fantasy. Oh no, there's 2 references. So Final Fantasy VIII has some very bizarre summons, and Excalibur makes an appearance with Gilgamesh, because you can actually summon Gilgamesh by random, I believe. So he will use 1 of 4 swords at random. Some of them can do instant death, some of them are extremely powerful, but obviously if you get Excalibur, that's a summon wasted and 1 damage dealt to the enemy, so yeah, not good.
Yeah, the Excalibur ends up becoming like Gilgamesh is almost like a signature like gag. If it's like in World of Final Fantasy, that's also a running gag of his. Which is funny too, because in that game he sounds like Toshiro Mifune. He's like running around doing this. He's like Bartsu, trying to challenge Bartz to a duel, and every time he like screws up and does the Excalibur attack. That's also one of his like summons if you decide to use him in his attacks if you fight him. And it's just like it's just ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun too, because that kind of adds to like Gilgamesh's kind of like bumbling nature.
That is very good. I'd forgotten that he popped up in World of Final Fantasy, having played it last year, and yeah, but
that was a game.
It was a game. It was okay. But the other time I remember is Final Fantasy IX. I haven't done this myself, but with the recent PS4 re-release, it might be doable. So there's obviously the thing called the Excalibur 2 run, and you get Excalibur 2 if you get to the final dungeon in like 13 hours or something ridiculous like that. When you get to the Excalibur 2, there's a note from Gilgamesh's kind of demon friend / chicken, green chicken, Enkidu, and the note makes a reference to Brother Gil, and how the person who wrote the note found both Excalibur 2 and Excalibur, and then Gilgamesh would like Excalibur 2, but he took the wrong sword instead, so the reason Excalibur 2 has been left in the final dungeon is because he made a mistake, pretty much. So Gilgamesh is just a barrel of laughs, really. I really, really enjoy him, but Battle of the Big Bridge has been redone so many times.
Yeah, it really has. That's kind of like if there's any one song that in Final Fantasy that's kind of been overdone that isn't One Winged Angel, it might be Battle on the Big Bridge.
Yeah, I mean the Keiichi Okabe reimagining of it for the episode Gladio was fantastic. So
yeah, that version's really good, and it's so weird because they take Gilgamesh completely seriously.
Oh yeah, no, I'm so disappointed in that. So I'm assuming that Excalibur doesn't come up because he's like a statue. He looks really grey, and I'm expecting all this red and flourishing armor and massive swords and chicken and everything like that, and I don't get it. And it's like,
yeah, no, and Kidu's like a dragon thing, and then Gilgamesh is just played completely serious. As like I don't know, it's like it's a funny like weird little touch. It's like this joke character is all of a sudden like take me seriously, Gladio. I'm gonna give you a scar.
That's so disappointing, and I think it would have been nice to have a bit of a light moment with Gladio, who has kind of he's kind of the dad of the group anyway. He's kind of got a slightly gruffer exterior than the rest of them. So it would have been nice if he was going on this grand quest to fight some warrior and it was just like Gilgamesh and his little chicken like, oh, sorry, but alas.
Although 15 itself has gotten its fair share of weird joke weapons through the DLC add-ons.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think there were any in the base game, but they've added in some pretty weird ones, like the Afro Sword.
Okay.
So if you do those timed quests they've been adding in, you earn like an in-game currency that can be spent on various rewards, and one of them is the Afro Sword, which is based on that DJ they got to compose for the game, Afrojack.
Oh, yes.
And it is a giant soundboard.
Amazing.
So you get to literally kill your enemies with dubstep.
Excellent. That is a very useful thing to know.
It doesn't help that the music that plays during the time quest is horrendous. Like, it is actual agony to listen to.
So it's like, is it a good sword though, or is it just kind of? Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't gotten it because every time I try to do one of the time quests, the music kicks in and I like go into a seething fit.
Oh dear. But no.
That's not entirely true. I think they may have changed it so that the beginning part's a little shorter because the actual like mix is okay. But I don't know. I've only done a couple of the time quests. And,
no.
It's basically just like a bunch of enemies spawn in the world. Go kill them.
Yeah. No, I haven't touched any of them. But I suppose staying with Final Fantasy, one thing I did want to bring up was Final Fantasy IV, and it's maybe not strictly a weapon, but one of the characters, Edge, has, as I've already referenced, a throw ability. And there's this particular side quest that you can get a spoon for, and the spoon is actually the best throwing weapon in the game, and it does the most damage. It does more damage than any of the swords. Maybe not as much as some of the swords, but it definitely does the most damage out of all of the main throwing weapons, like the shurikens and things like that. And I don't know whether it's a reference to Edward, but every time I just think of the localization from 1991 and just think, Spoony Bard? Like, throwing the Spoony Bard thing. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Exactly. Also, a bit more recent, but remember the, like, kind of terrible sequel that they did to Final Fantasy IV? As in the after years.
Oh God.
So apparently there is a joke item that you can trade in for in the final chapter, and it permanently boosts your MP. And it's a porno. So there's that at least. But yeah, it's kind of.
Wait, what is it?
It's a porno, so it's called Lustful Lolly Ho. It's a joke item. So you can permanently boost your MP by 50. So, it's going all Metal Gear Solid on me, but,
I mean, the problem with that is that you have to actually play the after years. I'm not sure I would want to subject anyone to that.
Do you know, I tried to play them when they first came out. When they came out as episodic on the Wii, and I bought one episode and was like, no, this is not right.
I held out for the PS. I played it on PSP in the complete collection, and I honestly don't know why I bothered. Because no, it's like oh yeah, they made a 4 sequel now. That's kind of interesting, right? No, we took the maps from 4 and like reused all the assets and just kind of like just put you in this completely like nonsense story.
Oh God.
And then the final section is like a boss rush against old Final Fantasy bosses. Like, they can't even do that right.
Oh boy, yeah. So you play through the whole thing?
I didn't play through the whole thing. No, I just looked it up. Like, I was like, God, I think I gave up somewhere in the middle of Golbez's chapter, because that's another thing. It's all split up in chapters, and all the characters have their own things. So it's not even like a cohesive RPG. It's just like a bunch of small, like, one-off things. I guess if there's like one saving grace, it's Holy Dragoon Kane. I guess like that's kind of cool. Gets his like his equivalent of Cecil's paladin.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's too little, too late, I guess.
Oh, no. I don't think I could put myself through it, especially when I like Final Fantasy IV so much, so I don't think it's worth it. Going back to Final Fantasy V really quickly, I've just remembered there's a weapon. There are 2 counterpart weapons. So one of them's a normal weapon, which is the best sword in the game. It's called the Brave Sword, which basically gets weaker every time you run away. So there's an opposite to it called the Chicken Knife. And so it starts off at 1, I believe, but every time you run away, it gets more powerful. The only downside to it is that it can force you to flee out of battles, and the maximum attack you can get out of it is 127, but it's also based on your agility stat, I believe, as well. So if you've got a character who's got really high agility, then it's an insanely good weapon, like an archer, so you can use some of their abilities to negate the automatic runaway as well. So it's just... Yeah, so I think that was quite a neat thing. I like weapons that power up through kind of outside means, like the blood sword obviously takes HP off of enemies and drains it and things like that. It's just really interesting. But I mean, the big joke weapon, I don't know whether you want to go on an ad lib about this, is kind of the Final Fantasy VII ones, and that's one of the ones that immediately came to mind when I was thinking up this list. So there are some particularly good ones on the Final Fantasy VII joke list.
Yeah, like the nail bat.
Everyone remembers the nail bat. Everyone remembers killing their first Marlboro with a nail bat, I think.
Cloud was prepared for the zombie apocalypse before anybody else was.
He totally was, before he had his meltdown as well. So, I mean, at least you get another sword before then, but... Yeah, so there were a couple of things. So, Ares had an umbrella. Tifa had some gardening gloves, which, works. They're pretty durable. Yeah, they're durable. Barrett has a rocket punch, so like the boxing glove on the spring. Yeah, it's so good.
So wait. So what you're saying is that Barrett is Snake. He's solid. He has a rocket vest.
Yeah, he totally does. But it's on a spring, so it's like one of those toy ones you get with the gun, but it's just on my arm apparently. But yeah, Yuffie gets like a beach ball, I think, and Vincent has a squirty gun, and Sid has a mop. So, yeah. And then I've got here that Kate Sith, and I don't remember Kate Sith's. He gets a shell, like a conch, but then I had to think for a minute, and I was thinking, Kate Sith fights with megaphones anyway, so it's like, what's redundant? Like
he's kind of a ridiculous character to begin with.
Exactly. So the stuff Moogle fights with, or stuff Mog, as Seven is localized, has megaphones where you shout commands into it. Do you know what? I still don't really know how the megaphone works, even 20 years after Final Fantasy VII came out.
Yeah, I can't say. I haven't played 7 in a while. I have it on PS4, so maybe I should actually go back to it before the remake comes out. But
yeah.
That's a big wait, so I'll have plenty of time. But oh god, what am I thinking? Kate Sith is such a bizarre character. It's like, and his default weapon's already a megaphone. So okay, see, how do you up joke that? Okay, I guess you get the seashell. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, there are some standard characters in. I mean, I don't think there are many in Final Fantasy that have bizarre weapons anyway, and my first thinking is always towards the Tales series, which I know you don't have much experience with, but there's at least one character in every game that has a bizarre or odd weapon, so... So I'll start with Tales of Destiny, and I believe she's an optional character. I just need to get her name. She's the main character's sister. She uses a kitchen ladle as a weapon. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I believe I've never played Tales of Destiny because it never came out over in Europe. So, Lilith Aileron. So, I think she's a spellcaster. That would make sense. Yeah, she uses a kitchen ladle and a frying pan in the PS2 version of the re-release, but originally she just uses rods and quarterstaffs, but I think kitchen ladle's more important. Completely.
Yeah.
So, other sort of standard weapons, something that's really popular in the whole series is books and cards. So Hilda in Rebirth and Sheena in Symphonia use cards, and I think Hilda just uses them for magical purposes, but Sheena literally fights with them like they're tiny little knives. So Sheena's a ninja basically, so she holds them between her fingers and basically slices through enemies with cards. And I didn't think of it as weird at the time because she uses them as summoning seals as well, so she can summon creatures out of them and summon kind of summoning circles. But just when I replayed it a couple of years ago, it was just like, why? Like, you're a ninja kind of thing. There's so many more interesting weapons that you can use.
When in doubt, I guess she's a ninja. She can turn anything into a weapon.
Yeah, and there are like joke weapons in that game anyway in Symphonia, so her joke weapon is a money bag.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't really know. I don't know how she's using that. It's like, is it notes? Is it just a bag of notes? I have no idea. I think they make the coin noise as well when you hit enemies with them, so I don't remember specifically.
I think you're hitting him with a Scrooge McDuck money pit or something like that.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. But there are other weapons as well in that game that are joke weapons as standard. So the only ones I can remember is that Lloyd, who is a dual swordsman, gets fans. Colette gets tambourines, which is quite cool. So she has chakra, which are like throwing rings, and she gets tambourines as her joke weapons, and I think that's really, really cute. And then another character who's got a bizarre standard weapon is Genus, and he uses a ball and cup toy called a kendama. Now, I feel like RPG's excuses for, oh, they're a magic user, so they can have whatever they want, is kind of appropriate, but...
Yeah, right.
He, like, juggles it around to cast magic spells and that, so... Yeah, I don't actually remember what his specific joke weapon was, but it was probably, like, a table tennis bat or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, there are some standard weird... Like, they kind of stick to the basic kind of jokey weapons in that series, which is quite cool, but sometimes the standard weapons are just more amusing. So, Rita uses a piece of fabric as a weapon in Vesperia. It's not even like a whip, it's literally a piece of stretchy fabric. And books are a standard thing as well, so in one of the more recent ones, Magalu uses books, so in Berseria she uses books, but that's more normal, I think. I'm used to that because of Castlevania. I think throwing Bibles around has made me, like, immune to book-wielding things, but Tales has some interesting interpretations in weapons sometimes. Oh, and Anis in From Abyss uses a giant doll, so everyone will know that she rides a big stuffed doll, and that's her weapon. Well, no, her weapon's a rod, but she rides a doll, and that does most of her attacking. So, yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Tales.
I'm not terribly familiar with Tales, so but yeah, that sounds about right for what I have seen from the series.
Yeah. So one of my favorites is from Exilia. I think it's in the sequel as well, Exilia 2, and I know you didn't like Exilia very much, but I don't know if you knew or know of Tipo, the little stuffed doll that one of the girls...
Tipo, yeah. I got to him, yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
so, Jude fights with fists, and his joke weapon is 2 giant Tipo mittens, and every time you attack enemies, it comes out... I think it comes out with phrases for what Tipo says or something like that, but that was one of my favourites in that series. Yeah, it was quite a nice, cute nod to previous games and things like that. And also there's a side quest in Exilia 2 where you have your cat and you have to send him out to go and find other cats, and if you get certain areas have certain items hidden, and each area has a weapon for the main character hidden, so the main character of Exilia 2 switches between 3 different weapons, so he has a hammer, daggers and guns, and 3 of these items are these weapons fashioned after the cat Rolo. So they're like, you get knives in the shape of a cat, you get pistols in the shape of Rolo, and you get a hammer in the shape of Rolo as well. And I've got a lot of time for those weapons. I had the Rolo blasters for ages. They were so great.
Okay, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
How do you make a knife shaped like a cat?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Especially a cat as fat as Rolo.
Yeah, so the Tales series has some wacky weapons anyway. Definitely would point you towards that. But I suppose, what else is there? I'm trying to think of other big series. Have you got any other ideas, or?
I've got one. So Alana, I heard you like Skies of Arcadia.
Oh no, you're stealing it! No! Ah!
Am I stealing it? Well, I was trying to lead it in so you could talk about it.
Okay, you can talk about it. I know what you're going to bring up though, so it's good. I had it already, but go for it.
Okay, go for it.
It's a test. But okay. I do like Skies of Arcadia, so thanks for leading me on to that. I was trying to avoid bringing it up now, but there are 2 weapons, only for the main 2 characters, weirdly enough. I mean, we'll go into Cupel anyway, because are you aware of the little blobby alien that travels around with Fina called Cupel?
Not really. I haven't played Skies of Arcadia. That's been one of my white whales for a while.
Oh, I really hope they re-release it. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about it. So yeah, Cupel's like a little pet that Fina has. So Fina's from some different nation, and she has like a little alien blob called Cupel, and you have to feed him like ancient rocks called chams. And depending on how many you give him, or whenever you give him, there are 2 different types. So there's normal chams and abric chams. And the abric chams kind of evolve him or take him down a different path. So it's like a weapons grid. So you can go and evolve him to a knife, or if you want, you can evolve him into a cone. So depending on how many chams he's eaten, he will morph into a different shape to attack enemies. So he'll be a spearhead at one point. I'm pretty sure his ultimate weapon is just a giant version of himself, so he's definitely a bizarre weapon for series standard. But I think what you're referring to are the 2 weapons for the main characters, as I sort of briefly mentioned before getting sidetracked. So there are 2, depending on what versions you've got, there are 2 ways of getting these weapons. So in the Dreamcast version, you had to download it with the VMU, which is the little memory card that you had plugged into the Dreamcast controller, where you could play around and play the minigame with Pinter and things like that. So these weapons are the Tuna Cutlass and the Swirlmerang. And so the way you get them in the GameCube version is a lot more interesting and a lot more complicated. So there's a side quest. I may well have referred to this in the Ultimate Weapons podcast, because you had to do this to get the ultimate weapon. You have to do the bounty hunts, and there's a particular bounty hunt called Vice the Imposter, which is 3 people imposing as Vice, Aika and Fina, called Vise, Anita and Fina, I think. And that fight is an absolute nightmare. So the bosses and the super bosses in Skies of Arcadia are really difficult, especially because they level up with you. So it doesn't matter whether you're level 20 or 40, they will still match your attack and defense power. Yeah, so it's not a case of over-leveling. Sometimes it's a case of getting better armor, for definite, but yeah, it's a pretty tough fight. It's definitely one of the harder ones of those, and as a reward you get the Tuna Cutlass and the Swirlmerang. And the Tuna Cutlass is, as you would expect, one of them is a knife which you cut fish with, and I think he also holds a tuna as well, so he holds, so a giant fish and a gutting knife as his secondary sword. They have ridiculously low accuracy, but they have one of the highest attack powers in the entire game. It's not really worth it, though, because the evasion rate in Skies of Arcadia is quite ridiculous sometimes, which is sad, but it's always amusing to see a Sky Pirate carrying a fish around, especially when you think that the fish in Skies of Arcadia all fly, and this one doesn't. But, yeah. But the Swirlmerang is sort of more interesting, because I don't know whether you could, figure out... Did you know what it was before reading up about it, or is this kind of the first time you've come across it?
Kind of the first time I've come across it. Are these exclusive to the GameCube version, or was there a way to get them in the Dreamcast version too?
Yeah, so sorry, I think I said you could download them using the memory card on the Dreamcast version, but you had to do a super boss to get them in the GameCube version, yeah. So you could get them in both.
Alright, well that is interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of a different way for a game from that time.
Exactly. But yeah, the Swalmerang is a giant lollipop, so it doesn't even look like a boomerang. And again, boomerangs are not really a standard RPG weapon anyway, but yeah, it's a giant pink and white lollipop that Ica throws at enemies. This has got the complete opposite. So whereas Vice's Tuna Cutlass has one of the highest attacks, Ica's lollipop has the lowest attack, but has an 100% chance of hitting and has an 100% chance of causing panic, which is the equivalent of confuse in this game. So it can be very useful. It just doesn't do a lot of attack, but if you're against really high enemies, causing confuse and forcing them to attack each other is really handy.
Right, yeah. It sounds like it could be useful. That's when they make the joke weapons that actually have some utility.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice change of pace.
They always kind of, with most of them I've seen, they always give it like one really good part and then like a drawback. Like, it's like if you put like a cursed armlet on, like, oh, your attack power's doubled, but you can't use magic kind of thing. That's always really handy. Yeah, this was my weekly Skies of Arcadia reference. I didn't cause it to happen, so you can definitely not hold it against me. But some other game. We were talking before the podcast about a game that came out a couple of years ago, Pillars of Eternity, and that had a pretty unique one.
Yeah, so I want to mention this because I haven't played Pillars of Eternity, but it does bring up something about joke weapons that I do find interesting from a design standpoint, which is items that are fundamentally useless, but kind of build up a mystique about them.
Yeah.
So before I get into Pillars of Eternity, I wanted to mention the pendant from Dark Souls, which isn't it isn't a weapon, but it was something. It's one of the items you can get at the beginning as like your gift. The item you get to pick at the start of the game, and the director of Dark Souls, Miyazaki, was like, he said in an interview that was his favorite item to start with, and because of that, the whole fan base, the whole community was like, oh, what does the pendant do? It must have some kind of like secret like use. It's gotta be. It's Miyazaki's favorite item. And when you get it, it doesn't do anything. And so like maybe you have to find a certain location in the game, or no. The pendant is actually useful. He came out a few months after release and was like,
brilliant.
And I just think I think that's hilarious. And the Pillars of Eternity has an item called the Disappointer, and it's a pistol that has bad stats, and its whole background is just talking about how terrible the weapon is, and it makes fun of anyone who holds onto it to see if it has secret potential or not, because it doesn't. It's just a bad weapon. In the game solely to make fun of bad weapons, and I don't know, I just think that's brilliant.
That is very good. I was very impressed with that when you found that. I think the Disappointer is a great weapon. Definitely go out of my way to find that one, I think. But yeah, Pillars is a really good game, and I think people should play it because CRPGs are kind of not forgotten, but they've had their glory day, and to see Pillars of Eternity and Divinity come out and just kind of wow everybody is a really nice thing. So this is my plug for Divinity and Pillars of Eternity to go and play them, for definite. But I'm going to jump to Zelda now, because I completely forgot that there are some really unique ways to kill enemies, and also, I mean, when I was researching for the podcast, the first way I came up about it, and this is kind of off on a tangent, did you ever play Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube with Link?
With Link, yeah, I did.
Yeah, so for each character you get multiple weapons and you can buy them, and one of Link's weapons is the bug net, and you can fight enemies with the bug net, and I think it's
marvelous.
It's a fairly good weapon. And then I dug into the bug net a little bit more to see if it had been used throughout the Zelda games, but it has. And actually, the Link to the Past, you can actually deflect the final boss's attacks with the butterfly net. So he does like projectile attacks that you can use the butterfly net against, and it will work. So that's really, really interesting. I think that's mainly the kind of only thing, unless it's been used in Breath of the Wild, which I am not far enough in.
I think secret utilities for the bug net have sort of become a running gag in the series. But there's one There's one of my favorites is in Twilight Princess. It was a glitch, but you can if you pull out the fishing rod during the final Ganondorf fight, Ganondorf will stop what he's doing and just stare at it. Like
That's
he does.
amazing.
It's hilarious. Like he will like literally the fight just kind of stops, dramatic music still playing. You'll just be standing up at the fishing rod and Ganondorf's just like, and it's actually useful because when you put away the fishing rod, he actually stays still for a few seconds, so you can run in and get a couple hits in. And I've seen people beat the final boss that way. I'm not sure if they kept that in the recent the Wii U HD version, but it was definitely present in the Wii version, and it's hilarious.
That is fantastic. Good grief.
So, fishing rod, the deadliest of weapons.
The fishing rod is the deadliest of weapons, and it's finally got a use in an RPG, which is great. Rather than just fishing. Well, not even an RPG, but whatever. Yeah, so... so I know Breath of the Wild uses kind of survival tactics, so I know you have skeleton arms, which you can use, but as far back as Ocarina of Time, you could use Deku Sticks as attacks, and you could use them to light torches, but basically if you use them to attack anybody, they would break in one hit. And again, digging into things a little bit more, in Link's Awakening, the shovel also deflects this the Dark Wizard's projectiles, but the boomerang can kill him in one hit, which is amazing. Like, I love how people find out these things as well. They're just kind of messing around, and I know they're not strictly weapons or anything, but at least the power-ups and the things that Link picks up, you know, they're utilised. But it just makes me laugh, and I do like the bug net thing. I think that's really, really funny, but obviously bottles are a long-standing tradition in the series as well, used to deflect and capture things. But Zelda, you never cease to amaze me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
On the subject of boomerangs, I remember an old Spoonie experiment video about a game called Ultima Runes of Virtue, and that was an attempt to bring the Ultima series to the Super Nintendo, and it's a terrible game. Like it's just kind of a bad action adventure game, but with terrible hit detection and no indication that you're getting hit until you just lose health and die. So the best weapon in that game to circumvent this problem is just to dual wield boomerangs.
Right.
So you can do that, or you can equip shurikens, which for some reason fly out of your character's butt.
Right.
I have no explanation for this. That's just how it works. Shurikens only attack from like behind you, and it's like coming out your butt.
Amazing. So you have two boomerangs coming out your butt, basically.
So you'll be chucking a boomerang one way and having a shuriken coming out the other way.
That is painful. That's not something I
Very
thought I'd be hearing. Well,
I don't want to think about how you're storing that.
That is good grief. So as far back as the SNES, we taking things here. Oh my god. So yeah, I'm gonna go back as far as the SNES as well and go for Earthbound, which again has kind of, like with Persona, has basic standard everyday items as a standard weapons. So people, if they're not familiar with Earthbound and probably played Smash Bros and seen that Ness uses a baseball bat as a standard weapon, there is a particular baseball bat called the Casey bat in Earthbound, so it has a very low hit chance. It depends on the strength of the enemy and the number of party members you've got. So if you've only got one party member, it's almost guaranteed going to miss. But when it does hit,
Right.
it has the highest attack power in the game. So when it does hit, it's like a kind of home run. And apparently it's a shout out to a baseball poem called Casey at the Bat, and the line, Casey swings hard but strikes out. So it checks your attack power when you... So there's a system in Earthbound where if you run into an enemy and you're too powerful for it, you won't even have to fight it. So it'll basically do an auto-win, which is a really, really good thing, and more games should do that. And so if you've got this bat on, then 9 times out of 10 you're not going to have to fight anything, which is always really, really handy. Yeah, so it kind of increases that chance. But, I mean, Jeff uses bottle rockets as a standard weapon, and ray guns as well. I don't remember what... Paulie uses frying pans, that's right. So there we go, more cooking utilities. So I think always get your saucepans ready, because that's kind of the thing that I would go to if I had a burglar in my house. I think I'd grab a saucepan, so I think that's definitely very me. But Mother 3 does something as well with joke weapons. So it's got a move called Honey Shower, and what it does is it basically covers your opponents in honey and they get mobbed by bees. But it's not very good. But maybe like 1 in 50 times a bear will come as well and will kill them. Kill the enemy. So Mother is just a bundle of joy.
Really is, though.
It really is. I don't know if it translates in game as well, but I know in Smash Bros. Lucas has a snake. So, as a grab. So I'm assuming that he has it in Mother 3 as well. Bring Mother 3 over to... Bring it officially over, please.
Please, Nintendo, please. Put it on the Switch. Put everything on the Switch.
Put everything on the Switch. So... Super Mario RPG has some other stuff as well. So, there's more armor than weapons, I would say. So we've kind of gone a bit off track, but... there is a piece of equipment called the Quartz Charm, which you get from beating the super boss Culex, which is a reference to Final Fantasy IV and the 4 crystals, and it boosts your attack and defense, but it doesn't tell you that it does it, so it just says something like it does nothing. But it doubles your attack, doubles your offense, and protects against instant death. So just kind of don't assume, I suppose, that items don't do anything, which is kind of difficult when you get things like baseball bats and things like that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the Mario RPGs, that's another thing, too, where it's like, what are the default equipment options in those games are like, you give, are like boots and hammers and kind of typical Mario fare as well.
Mm.
But even then, they manage to still kind of have some fun with it.
Yeah, I think it gets away with it from the cartoony kind of, cute side of things. The Mario RPGs were solid. Really like them.
Right. Yeah, they were quite a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go to Xenoblade now, so I'm gonna jump quite a way in the distance. The Xenoblade Chronicles, yeah. So there is a bonus boss. It's like a really long side quest that's level 78. There's a level 78 enemy at the end of the side quest. And you get 2 different weapons from this side quest. And one of them is Ricky's best weapons. And the other one is something called the Monopon, which has got a damage range of 1-1. And it's got like a 30% critical hit rate. Ricky has like some really big staffs anyway. So, I mean, I can't remember the specific weapon actually. But I remember looking into it a little bit and thinking it was quite quirky. I mean, Ricky's a quirk anyway. So he gets away with a fair amount of things, I would say.
Right.
But yeah, Xenoblade doesn't really do joke weapons as much, and neither does Xenogears. They were kind of some of the things that I was trying to think of before the podcast. Monster Hunter does joke weapons, and Mike is probably going to shoot me down for this because I don't really know much about the Monster Hunter series. So the most obvious one that I heard of is called the Melinks, and they are stuffed animals. So they have a very low damage output, but they also paralyze nearly everything. So they are very handy. So they paralyze things. It's only for like 5 or 10 seconds, I think, but it's very, very, very useful.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
And there's also a popcorn gun. It's made out of a corn on the cob. Yeah. If you want to take down giant dinosaurs with your giant corn on the cob, then that would be really handy.
Doesn't make sense, yeah.
Yeah, Monster Hunter is crazy in terms of size and flexibility.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see if Monster Hunter World ends up getting some some good joke weapons, because that game looks pretty dang epic right now. But I would be interested to see what they can apply to that new style.
Yeah, so because Mike's not here, I'm going to stand in for him as well, and I'm sure he would throw this out. So, in Ultimate Weapons, he came up with Disgaea, and I'm going to fill in the Disgaea kind of bubble for him. So, there is the most well-known one is the Puppy Paw Stick. So this is kind of a ridiculous looking weapon. It's just basically a puppy paw, but it grants the enemy a 20% chance to steal anything when you defeat another enemy. So it's really, really handy for when you're grinding, when you're trying to get duplicates, and Disgaea a grind anyway, so I take anything that would give a higher percentage of stealing or getting equipment or anything like that. Disgaea is crazy with the amount of stuff that it comes up with. Like, you have penguins in your army. You have Prinnies. I think that's enough to say kind of, oh, look at us. But Disgaea 4 as well has the puppy paw stick, and it has a really kind of ridiculous way to get it. So you have to catch a basset, which I believe is what's called a tier 6 Nekomata. I believe it's a very high ranking class member that you can catch. And also they come with a chest, and you have to hope that it contains it. So it's got like a 10% or 5% drop rate or something like that. Yeah. Disgaea is very, very crazy. But one thing I think want to end the podcast on is, again, slightly less weapony, is Castlevania, and especially some of the more recent entries. So Symphony.
Oh yeah, the Alucard gear.
Yeah, so the Alucard gear. Do you want to go for it, or?
I was, because we did Symphony of the Night on a podcast many moons ago, as it were, and the Alucard equipment is like, because there's the Alucard equipment, which is like Alucard's best gear, all the stuff he loses at the start of the game, and the Alucard equipment is really bad. It's like your like joke spell. It's like the Excalibur basically, but it does have the side effect of boosting drop rates really well. So it actually can be used to get better gear in a way, like get the Chrysogram or get just in general. It's bad gear that has a utility.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the rods is on their own anyway, and we brought this up in the Ultimate Weapons. The shield rod is rubbish, but then when
God, the shield of unstoppable death.
But then when you put a shield on and you stand underneath Gargaroth or whatever the ultimate sub-boss is, he's dead in like 10 seconds. It's ridiculous. But the rods don't ever make a comeback in the series, and I wonder if it's because I feel like they didn't bug test Symphony of the Night sometimes. I love that game, but it's so exploitable. It's so wonderful.
I don't think I think Symphony of the Night is very much like a test run for that style, and a lot of why we love it is because of just how zany and busted it can get.
Exactly. So in a couple of later games in the series, the Aria and Dawn of Sorrow duology in specific, you have the ability to use monster souls as powers to use kind of like in replacement of Alucard's magic or sub-weapons and things like that. So there is a particular enemy in these games called the Waiter Skeleton, and the way they attack you is that they throw plates of curry at you. So when you have this as a particular ability, if you equip it and use it, that curry, you throw it at enemies and it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it acts as a landmine, so if somebody stands on the plate, it explodes. It doesn't do loads of damage, but it's quite funny, and it's actually one of the rarest souls in the game to get. It's got a drop rate of like 0.5%, and I think it was the last one I got in my 100% run of Dawn of Sorrow. But it's just quite funny. But you can use it against two of the most powerful enemies in the game, called the Iron Golem and the Final Guard, which are basically like giant armor pieces that stand higher than the screen, do like 300, 400, 500 damage a hit, and they're so slow so that you can throw all the curry. And it uses like 1 MP, if that. You can throw loads of plates of curry and just kill them by exploding curry on the floor, really. So yeah. And going with the food theme as well, Portrait of Ruin has the sub-weapon system, which is the one where you swap between the two characters, and there's a weapon that's a cream pie, and it's rubbish again, and it does like an awkward downward arc, but there is a boss that's weak to the cream pie, and if you use it, it's really, really powerful against him. The element of it, it's like the only sub-weapon that has the dark element on it, and that boss is like the only boss that's weak to dark elemental stuff. But yeah,
the most effective of all weapons, the power of pie.
The power of pie. The power of pie is good. But I think, do you have any other suggestions, or?
I think we've run the gamut with this episode.
I do. I think we've come up with some really good suggestions, and I'd say thanks very much everyone for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as a nice follow-up to Ultimate Weapons. Say if you're ever in a final boss, then just grab your umbrellas and things, and I'm sure you'll be okay. But anyway, just for kind of housekeeping things, so next week we're currently in the middle of our September-October Game Journal Digital Devil Saga, and next week we'll see part 2 of that. So I believe, Peter, you're on those episodes, and hopefully, I mean, have you played them before, or?
I actually haven't. I've that's not true. I tried playing Digital Devil Saga on the PS3, but that emulation is a little iffy. Okay. So I'm considering this a first-time playthrough.
I think so. That's fair. Yeah, I've never played Digital Devil Saga, so I'm definitely interested in those episodes. I'll be catching up with episode 1. Episode 2 is out next week, so keep an eye out for that one. November, though, so we are planning something a little bit different. It's kind of a site-wide thing that we're doing, but we're not going to be having a game journal, so no two-parter. We're going to have 4 individual episodes, and they're all going to be based along a month-long feature that we're going to be doing on RPG Fan, which we are really excited for. We're right in the middle of planning and prepping for it now. It's a bit hectic on the site, but it's going to be worth it. We're really excited to show you what we've got, and really excited to show you what Retro Encounter's got ready for you, so please look forward to those. And after episode 100, we now know that in December, Breath of Fire 4 will be the game of the month, so super happy about that. Yeah, I know, it beat Vagrant Story, I'm sorry.
It's alright.
But yeah, no, I will probably be tagging along for those, because it's been 16 years since I played them, that one, and please look forward to that one. So, in terms of getting a hold of you, Peter, where can we find you?
As always, you can find me. I'm at I Have Fury on Twitter. Same as my forum handle, which you can reach me there, or preferably email me, petert@rpgfan.com.
Okay, emails. So, yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Alana Hagues. On the boards, I'm Diving Falcons, and also, if you want to email me, AlanaH@rpgfan.com. But in terms of the podcast, we would really, really like to hear from you all the time. You can email us at retro@rpgfan.com, where Mike Solosi will be manning the inbox, replying to your emails. Please email him to play Kingdom Hearts, because there is now a forum thread about it, so, you know, just kind of back it up.
Please talk Mike into playing Kingdom Hearts. I want to hear his screams.
He won't hate it as much. He doesn't hate it as much as he does anyway, but he's not going to hate it too much. It's fun. So, yeah, you can email us or always talk to us on the forums. If you've got a handle on there, we'd love to hear your thoughts, recommendations for episodes, just kind of thoughts about past and present episodes that have been on. Really, really love to hear from you. And of course, what's more important is that you leave us feedback on any of your listening devices, so Google Play, iTunes, anything like that. We'll always love 5-star reviews, but absolutely anything is welcome. We really love to hear from you. Your participation is important, as shown by the episode 100 poll, and you mean a lot to us, so thanks for sticking around for over 100 episodes now, and I can't quite believe that we're getting towards 110 already. We'll still be going for a long time, I think, and really thanks very much for listening to this episode. If you want to get in touch, please do, and we will see you on the next episode where we'll be playing Digital Devil Saga. Thanks very much.